I used to joke that our apartment had more coffee mugs than dreams. We'd collected them over 10 years, college freebies, conference swag, a chipped one from a roadside diner in Utah. Back then, a mismatched cabinet meant we'd chosen each other over symmetry. Lately, it felt like the only thing we still chose together was autopay. I noticed it first in small ways. The way Emily pulled out of hugs early, the way her phone slept face down, the way her calendar invited me to tentative anniversaries. Then the promotions started, one after another. Her firm put her on the kind of clients that have their logos stitched into the air at airports. With each new deal, she slipped further from the life we had built, a life that used to include Sunday pancakes and a running joke about our neighbors' wind chimes. When she finally said the words, I was chopping onions for chili. "I want a divorce," she said, straight as a headline. I remember the onion sting crawling into my eyes and thinking how convenient it was to have an excuse for tears. She didn't look angry, or even bored. She looked busy, like she was checking off an item on a to-do list. "I've got big plans," she added, like it was supposed to comfort me. "I don't think you fit into them." She could have said, rusty patio chair, or expired coupon. It would have landed the same. I tried to keep the floor under me. "Big plans like what?" I asked. She shrugged, a polished CEO-grade shrug. "Just life, travel, new projects, freedom." The word hung there like a balloon with no string, drifting toward a ceiling I couldn't reach. I wanted to ask the unkind questions, the ones that stack up inside your mouth and make your tongue feel heavy. I didn't. If our marriage had rules, one of them had always been this: don't say things you can't take back. So I stirred the pot and told her the chili would be ready in half an hour. Divorce is not a meteor that smashes one night and leaves a crater by morning. It's a quiet snowfall that piles until a roof groans. That night, I slept on the couch to give her space. The cushions kept my spine in a question mark. In the morning, I poured coffee into the chipped Utah mug. The crack ran like a river across a canyon. It didn't leak. Small mercies. Over the next week, the practicalities moved in like new roommates, splitting accounts, calling the landlord, making a spreadsheet labeled stuff. Emily suggested we keep it civilized, efficient, painless, a word she used twice, which told me she'd rehearsed. I nodded and said we could. Inside, I was making a different list, one that held the ache of 10 years in the same handwriting. Her laugh when she saw a dog with its head out the car window, the way she tucked one leg under her at the movies, the peppermint lotion she pretended not to like but always bought in December. It is hard to divide a life when your memories don't come with price tags. Two things altered the quiet drift of our separation. The first was a voice. Not mine, not hers. It arrived one afternoon while I was watering the rubber plant, the one she swore was impossible to kill. A text pinged on her tablet, which she'd left on the counter. We'd never been snoopers, but the screen lit with a preview that made my breath catch. I didn't have to open anything. I saw enough to understand the shape of what I'd been refusing to name: a client, a first name I recognized from her meetings, a line that said, "Last night was perfect," crowned with a heart that felt like a vandal's tag on my front door. My hand shook, the water stream hitting the plant in one sad flood. I shut the tablet and stood very still, like stillness might rewind time. The second thing was the mirror. I looked at myself and saw someone I hadn't checked on in a while. Not a doormat, not a martyr. Someone who had given and waited and made room. I wasn't blameless. Marriages rarely break along a single fault line. But I wasn't disposable. The anger that rose wasn't hot. It was a steady heat, the kind that warms iron. We talked that night. I didn't want shouting. I wanted truth. "Is there someone?" I asked. She blinked, tired more than guilty. "It's complicated." The answer people give when they want a shortcut through accountability. I kept my voice even. "A client?" A pause, too long for innocence. "I didn't plan it," she said. "It just happened." Things that just happen are usually planned by the part of us that doesn't like to sign documents. I told her about the tablet. She went pale, then hard. "You had no right," she said. Which was probably true. But the reality sat between us anyway, solid as a coffee table. "We can keep this clean," she added, as if the floor could be mopped. "You'll be fine. You're a good man. You'll find someone who fits." As if I were a pair of shoes that pinched the wrong toe. The next days were a maze of polite logistics and jagged silence. I ran in the park after work to exhaust my mind. I thought about telling his company, about writing a furious message to him, about standing outside her building with a sign reading, "Ask her about the ethics clause." None of that felt like me. It felt like a version of me that would leave a mess I'd have to live in. I wanted something better than mess. I wanted fair. I started gathering facts the way you gather daylight in winter, carefully, thankful for each minute. I checked our phone plan and the shared cloud backups, not to pry for shock value, but to understand. I found messages that read like a script for a movie I hadn't agreed to audition for. Praise for her brilliance, dinner reservations, lines that pretended to be philosophical about freedom while stepping around promises. I found photos too, but I didn't stare. I didn't catalog. I closed them fast, not to unsee them because you can't, but to keep my mind from turning into a projector that would play the worst reels at 2 a.m. I didn't want to humiliate her. Humiliation felt like gasoline near a stove. What I wanted was a lever, something that would put weight on the side of fairness so it wouldn't tip against me. I booked a consult with an attorney whose office smelled like lemon cleaner and pages. She listened without the eager sympathy friends offer. She cared in a precise way, measuring the facts as if they were fabric for a suit. "Do you want reconciliation?" she asked. The question startled me because it implied there was still a door, even if it had swollen in the frame. I thought about it honestly, then shook my head. "I want what's right. I want the truth to matter." She nodded, made notes. Then we proceed carefully. No public drama, no threats, documentation, professional channels. I left with a plan that felt like a handrail. We'd request mediation. We'd outline assets, debts, and contributions. We'd gather the communications relevant to timing and choices, not the kind that would blow up a group chat. If the firm had policies, we'd consider appropriate reporting, not as revenge, but as a boundary. Adults should not get to set fires in other people's houses and still expect a thank you card. That night, Emily tried to be friendly. She asked about my day, told me about a pitch she nailed, used a tone that once would have made me melt. I kept my replies kind and spare. She noticed. "You're being distant," she said, like it was a surprise. "I'm being respectful," I answered. "Respectful of the process, respectful of the truth." She folded her arms. "You're going to make this ugly." Her prediction sounded like a warning. I thought of the tablet lighting up on the counter, the phone turned face down, the word freedom used like a hall pass. "No," I said. "I'm going to make it honest." Days later, chance threw me a sharper tool. Her client, the man with the slick laugh from cocktail hours, spoke on a live stream about partnerships built on trust. I watched him sell sincerity to a crowd that typed confetti emojis. A few minutes later, the chat hiccuped. For less than a heartbeat, his camera glitched, and a private notification floated across his screen, a message from Emily. It wasn't scandalous, not in the cinematic sense. It was an inside joke that should never have been inside their relationship. I replayed it, slow as a frame-by-frame review. The world didn't see it, the overlay flickered too fast. But I saw enough to realize something simple and decisive. They were careless. Not doomed by fate lovers. Careless. People who cut corners and call it destiny. I saved what I needed, the times, the dates, the shards that formed a pattern, without turning my life into a shrine to hurt. I made a folder for the attorney and another for myself with a different name. After. Inside it, I placed a photo of the Utah mug, a playlist, a list of places within a day's drive I'd never bothered to see. The old lighthouse on the point, the drive-in that still lit its neon script on Friday nights, the state park where the pines lean like good. Listeners. On a Wednesday, we sat across from each other at the kitchen table, a neutral ground that had seen birthday candles and bills. "We're going to mediation," I said steady. "We should do it right. We should do it kindly, but we're not pretending." She held my gaze for a long time. For a moment I saw the girl from the campus bookstore, the one who wrote her phone number inside a library receipt, and told me I looked like someone who took long walks in rain. Then the moment hardened into the woman who believed I didn't fit her big plans. "Fine," she said. "If that's how you want it." "It's how it needs to be," I replied. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw accusations like darts. I put my hands flat on the table and breathed. The rubber plant watched from the window, glossy and stubbornly alive. Later, when she left for a late meeting, I sat in the quiet. The apartment felt different, like a stage after the cast had gone home. I closed my eyes and promised myself two things. I wouldn't touch chaos, and I wouldn't be small. If I drew lines, it would be with a steady hand. If I spoke, it would be toward the light. I didn't know then that the next day would hand me an unexpected audience and a better way to tell the truth than I had imagined. But I had a feeling, deep and practical as the weight of the Utah mug. Storms move on when you stop trying to bargain with the clouds. The next morning, sunlight came through the blinds in thin gold lines, cutting across the floor like tally marks. I woke up earlier than usual, the kind of early that happens when your mind refuses to sleep through its own noise. Emily's side of the bed was empty, her pillow smooth. A note sat on the dresser, neat, formal, not cruel, but cold enough to chill the air. Staying at the hotel for a few nights. Need space before mediation. Don't contact me unless it's legal or urgent. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and slid it into a drawer. There was something freeing in her absence. The apartment felt bigger, less like a museum of what used to be and more like an empty canvas. I brewed coffee, opened the window, and let the city noise in. It wasn't peace yet, but it was the sound of something beginning again. Later that day, my attorney called. She'd reviewed the files I sent, the messages, the timestamps, the proof that Emily's complicated story wasn't just emotional confusion. "You handled this wisely," she said. "You didn't leak, you didn't accuse publicly, you documented quietly. That restraint will count." I thanked her, though the praise felt like a bandage over a bruise. "What about her company?" I asked. "They'll have to know," she said, "especially if this crosses professional lines." It did, and we both knew it. The client wasn't just a fling, he was tied to major deals, high-value accounts. The company had policies, the kind that came in fine print everyone ignored until it mattered. She offered to handle the communication, making it formal, factual, non-vindictive. I agreed. The world didn't need a scandal. It just needed truth. 2 days later, I got the email. Her firm was reviewing a potential conflict of interest. That's corporate language for someone messed up and we're figuring out who gets the blame. Emily must have found out quickly because she showed up that evening unannounced. She looked tired but still sharp, dressed in the same armor she wore to client meetings. Heels, blazer, confidence painted like gloss. "Did you do this?" she asked, skipping hello. "I told the truth," I said. "You ruined my reputation," she snapped. "No," I replied, calm. "You gambled with it. I just stopped pretending not to notice." For a moment, she didn't speak. Then something in her cracked. Not anger, exactly, but disbelief that her choices had consequences. "You don't understand," she said softly. "He promised me partnership, new opportunities. This was supposed to change everything." "It did," I said quietly, "just not how you expected." She sank into a chair, staring at the floor. For the first time in months, I saw her without the ambition, without the slogans about freedom. She looked small, real, almost human again. But sympathy and forgiveness are not the same thing. I didn't gloat, didn't yell. I poured her a glass of water and left it on the table. "You'll land on your feet," I said. "You always do." She looked up. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "No," I said. "But I am done apologizing for being the one who stayed loyal." After she left, I felt something I hadn't in months. Quiet relief. It wasn't victory. It was the absence of chaos, like a house after the storm has passed and all you hear is dripping gutters. Weeks went by. Mediation came and went without fireworks. We divided our things fairly. She kept the car and her stocks. I kept the apartment and my sanity. The company eventually reassigned her. She didn't lose her job, but she lost the client, the promotion, and the reputation she'd tried to build on perfection. Word spread quietly in their circles, not as gossip, but as caution. I never shared the photos or messages online. I never sent them to friends. That wasn't justice. It would have been destruction. My revenge had already happened in silence, through calm truth and the patience she never thought I had. Months later, I ran into her by chance. It was in a coffee shop downtown, the kind we used to visit before everything turned into strategy meetings. She smiled politely, that new, polite people learn after they've burned bridges. "You look good," she said. "I am," I answered. "You?" "I'm getting there." She paused. "You were right. About everything." I didn't need to reply. She knew. When she left, I sat for a long time, sipping my coffee. The barista called out names, laughter rose from a nearby table, and the world kept spinning. Indifferent, forgiving in its own way. I thought about how endings aren't always explosions. Sometimes they're quiet. Corrections, a return to balance. That night I walked by the bay. The wind carried salt and faint music from a nearby pier. I took out my phone and deleted the last folder labeled Evidence. It felt good to let it go. Some stories don't need sequels, they just need closure. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for her to come home. I was already there. 6 months passed before I realized I'd stopped checking my phone for her name. Healing doesn't announce itself. It just slips quietly into your routine until one day you wake up and realize your first thought isn't why. Life became simpler. I started running again, joined a small local photography club, and learned how to cook something other than chili. The apartment no longer felt like a museum of loss. It felt lived in. The walls carried laughter again, just from different voices. Friends visited more, and one night, my buddy Sam raised a glass and said, "You're back, man. Took you a while." I laughed. Guess I needed the reboot. But closure isn't a single moment. It's a series of small choices. One of them arrived by mail one morning, an envelope with Emily's handwriting. Inside was a single photo, the Utah mug now glued back together. Beneath it, she'd written, "You were right. Some cracks hold better than perfection." No apology, no plea, just a truth. I placed it on a shelf, not as a souvenir of pain, but as proof that even broken things can become reminders of strength. I saw her once more, months later, at a charity gala. She was talking to a group of executives, laughing, poised. When she noticed me, her expression softened. Respectful, not regretful. We spoke briefly. She told me she'd started consulting on her own, smaller clients, fewer politics. "It's quieter," she said, "but it feels honest." I smiled. "That's worth more than a corner office." She nodded. "I know that now." There was no tension, no leftover bitterness, just two people who had shared a story that ended where it needed to. When she walked away, I didn't feel the old ache. I felt gratitude, because her leaving, painful as it was, had forced me to rebuild the parts of myself I'd left idle. That night, I posted one of my photos online, a sunrise over the bay, calm water, soft light. The caption read, "You don't lose yourself when someone walks away. You rediscover who you were before you tried to fit into their shadow." The post went viral, shared by strangers who saw themselves in it. Messages poured in from people thanking me for the reminder that revenge doesn't have to be fire, it can be peace. And that was the real twist in the story. My revenge had never been about hurting her. It was about refusing to let her version of me be the final draft. The best revenge wasn't the exposure, the firm's inquiry, or the way her plans unraveled. It was my calm, my growth, my quiet happiness. 1 year later, I met someone new. Her name was Claire, an artist who believed that people, like canvases, could be painted over without erasing what came before. She didn't ask about Emily much, and I didn't bring her up. The past had already served its purpose. Sometimes, on quiet Sundays, Claire and I drive to that diner in Utah where the chipped mug came from. The waitress still recognizes the story behind it. I always leave a generous tip and take a photo of the table, the same one from years ago. It's my own way of saying, this is where I learned that endings can start with breakfast. Emily's name rarely crosses my mind now, but when it does, it's not with anger. It's like remembering a song that once mattered. She got her freedom, and I found something better, peace. So when people ask me what happened, I don't tell them about betrayal or exposure. I tell them this: Sometimes the universe gives you heartbreak to edit your story. And if you write it honestly, you realize the plot was never about losing someone else. It was about finding yourself. And that, I suppose, is where the story truly ends. Not with revenge, not with regret, but with a man standing in the morning light, coffee in hand, ready for whatever comes next.